Yes, sir.
Is the water going to be clean enough to drink? The wastewater?
David, can you answer that? Or?
So this is going to be the same water quality as your creek water almost, and the purpose of this treatment, say, you,
Please, let's listen to his
so
answer.
you need to treat further, right? The surface water, if you want to drink it. So the purpose of this treatment is to, so that the treated water, the wastewater, cannot further degrade the water quality of the existing water. That's the whole purpose of this treatment process. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
I play golf at a lot of golf courses that use recycled water to water, and they all have signs everywhere. Don't drink the water, not potable. Why would they have those signs if wastewater is drinkable?
The draft permit was, what we did take into consideration is that it does have the criteria to be protective of human health and primary contact recreation, which does include swimming, and so it is designed to be protective of human health.
Thank you.
Question, sir?
My second question is, how will the comments we provide you, if we provide you information that you did not consider, how will they be used to make the decision on the permit?
If you are providing new information, then we will look at the information and we will consider it and evaluate it, and if deemed applicable, then we can use that and change the permit if it is deemed applicable.
It's going to be on your second question.
Do you have some sort of preliminary layout where the houses are going to be built on the property? And do you have an idea where the sewer collection lines will be relative to the property?
That's applicants. Can y'all address that?
The site has not been designed.
Please use the microphone. Stand up.
Sorry. The development has not been designed by the development engineers, so at this point, we've only laid out the treatment plant to be able to handle the flow that's coming in. So hope that answers your question.
On the map of the plant site, it indicates a right-of-way that takes that little chunk out of there. So you're telling me no roads have been laid out as far as you know?
Not finally, for sure.
Okay. I'm not building this thing, you are.
It's going to change every day.
What endangered species did you identify and where?
Michelle.
Unendangered, can you hear? Yeah. Okay. An endangered species review was part of my part of the review, and that consists of looking at our database and seeing what aquatic and aquatic dependent species are within. We look at the county and then the water bodies, and while there are endangered species within Bexar County, this is not identified as being a priority watershed of concern.
You do know that there's a cave preserve with endangered karst invertebrates in it along the bank of the creek.
Yes, but this is not identified as being a watershed of priority of concern. But those aquatic species were.
Well, these are not aquatic species.
Could you repeat the?
These are karst invertebrates that live in a cave on the creek.
Those are considered aquatic dependent species. So those are included in the review.
Any other endangered species? Did you walk the creek?
I did walk the creek.
You did walk the creek. Where did you walk the creek?
We walked from the outfall, where the outfall was, and we walked probably like 2 miles downstream from that.
2 miles. Did you leave the Guajolote property at any time?
I think so.
You would have been on private property.
Please,
We were in the stream bed.
let's maintain
We
order
were in
in
the
here.
stream
Do
bed.
you remember crossing through a metal water trap at any point in time?
A metal water trap?
Yes, a metal water trap.
I don't recall.
Then you didn't leave the Guajolote property.
Sir, you have a very long line behind you. Could we let some other people speak up?
Yeah, in a
And then
minute.
you can come back.
Now, these plants that you're talking about putting in, do they have a fairly standard output in terms of BOD and TSS and what have you? Is it just a standard process that the plant does, or does the operator determine to what degree the water is clean?
The way the permit is written, there are a set of criteria for what can actually be discharged. And operators always meet that, and that, as a matter of fact, they want to be well below that, generally speaking.
Okay. Would you consider those limits safe for the contributing zone and the proximity of this project to the recharge zone?
Personally, yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the user services agreement between Lennar and Saws?
In passing.
Are you familiar with the fact that they are supposed to use enhanced treatment methods in this plant, according to that agreement?
I can't say that I recall that now. I'll take it on faith that that's in there.
You may. So has anyone from your team walked anything beyond the boundaries of the Guajolote Ranch?
Other than public right-of-way, looking at dams, et cetera, downstream, nope.
So you do know about the dams downstream,
I do,
but they weren't included in the permit.
correct.
Okay. Was there a reason for that?
It's not a regulatory criteria under the program.
And yet the Highland Lakes are precluded from discharge because they're reservoirs. Can you explain that?
That's probably better directed to the regulatory body.
Heather, do you know the answer to that?
What is the question?
What is the question?
The question is, we have 6 dams on the Helotes Creek below the Guajolote Tract. They're used primarily for swimming, but one is a fishing and boating lake. In the Highland Lakes, the TCEQ has a rule that prevents discharge to lakes and reservoirs because of increased sedimentation and nutrient densification. How would that rule apply to these dams?
Good evening, my name is Brittany Lee and I'm one of the senior staff reviewers at the TCEQ for the Water Quality Standards Implementation Team. The Highland Lakes are a different breed essentially. In Helotes Creek, those rules wouldn't apply here. That's only for the Highland Lakes. So if your question is how would we apply that watershed rule to this watershed, we would not.
Now, I'm not asking you to apply that rule. I'm asking you to apply the underlying understanding of why that rule exists to these dams.
So in this particular review, based on our implementation procedures, we're required to review up to 2 miles downstream for a 1 million gallon per day plant, such as this one in their final phase.
What about a 1 to 4?
For a 1 to 4, it's 2.7 miles. Or for a 1 to 2, it's 2.7 miles. For a 2 to 3.5, it's 2.9 miles. For 3.5 to 5 miles, it's 3.2.
Is this not a 1 to 4 permit?
So this is a 1 MGD permit. We've only evaluated up to 1 million gallons per day. So what was considered is one of those ponds was considered in this particular review. The other 4.
One of which ponds?
One of the ponds that you're speaking of, I'm assuming, but the dam ponds are not a part of this review, or the pond, or whatever portion of the creek that you're speaking of, it wasn't a part of this review. It's too far downstream.
If it's within 2.7 miles, it's not.
If it's within 2 miles, so
2.7. The permit says 1 to 4 million with a 1 million average.
right. So again, we are required to review, and I can show you right here, sir. We're required to review based on the permitted flow per day. There's a chart in our implementation procedures. If you guys want to look it up on page 17, you're welcome to. And on this chart, for a 1 to 2, it's 2.7. However, this one is up to 1 MGD in their final phase, their average. So we reviewed in practice, we go 3 miles. However, we're required to evaluate 2 miles. And in those first 2 to 3 miles that were evaluated in this review, there was 1 pond that was noted and accounted for. We've also walked that pond, we've seen that pond, we know the characteristics of that pond.
Is that the pond on the Guajolote Ranch?
Yes, sir, I believe it is.
Okay.
1.1.
If the water is within the bed and banks, it belongs to the state.
Now, I'm talking about in the sewer line, when I flush my toilet in the house that I buy in the Lennar development, and it's traveling downstream to the sewer plant, who owns that water?
That's a different department than what we work in, sir.
Okay, so you don't know the answer. When you discharge it from your plant to the discharge point on the Guajolote, who owns that water?
Again, that's a legal question. I'm just the engineer.
Is there anyone at the
That is
TCEQ
the
that can answer
state.
it?
That's the state. That's Waters of the U.S.
The state owns it from the plant to the discharge point.
Can you stand up, please, so people can see who's talking?
Once it leaves the discharge point and enters the bed and banks, it becomes waters of the state.
Okay. The question was, from the plant to the discharge point, who owns it?
That would be the plant. It's on their property.
The plant owns it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the plant own it from the homeowner's home to the plant?
Sir, would you like to submit these for
Yeah,
informal
you should
comment?
I already have.
All right, good.
I already have.
Well, then, you may sit down and let someone else speak.
I want to hear the answers.
For your question on what happens once you flush that water and it goes into the collection system, the permit holder is the responsible party. So I guess you could say they own it. So if something were to happen, such as an unauthorized discharge from the collection system, the permit holder is the responsible party. If an unauthorized discharge comes to the plant from the plant, like out of like partial treatment, but it wasn't fully treated and didn't come out of the actual discharge authorized location, the permittee is responsible. That would be an unauthorized discharge.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That does. Are you familiar with the WASP system?
Vaguely, but that's not in our area.
Why doesn't the TCEQ use the WASP system that's used by EPA to evaluate streams?
So the WASP system modeling is actually a little more accurate and applicable to larger water bodies like lakes, estuaries, maybe large tidal streams. This is a very small intermittent pools creek setting. So we actually use Qualtex, which is the other sort of rivers and streams main EPA modeling program.
Are you familiar with the Southwest Research Institute study conducted in 2019 and 2020 that did a complete computer modeling of the Helotes Creek watershed?
Yes, thanks to several comments, I'm aware of it, and I looked it up, and I believe they have a final report coming out this year at some point.
The final report came out in October of 2020.
Oh, but online it said final report coming to.
I think you're referring to the San Antonio report.
Okay.
The outcome of that report, which was done by a group of scientists at Southwest Research, determined that any type of wastewater added to the Helotes Creek would degrade the water, recharging the aquifer. Why do you think your assessment varies so dramatically with Southwest Research?
So again, I haven't had a chance to fully consume this report and look at it. That is something that, again, if it's in the comments, we're going to look into and analyze.
So we have to do your work for you.
My modeling work did look at the effluent limits for the surface water, which is what we are charged with making sure it maintains its aquatic life and human health criteria. And for that, yes, I did model it using the Qualtex program and determine the BOD, ammonia, nitrogen, dissolved oxygen.
I'll be brief.
Please be mindful and respectful to one another so we can get through this process.
You talk to me?
No, sir, you're next. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. I'll be brief. I would like to know if anyone, especially you guys, have ever done a survey to locate all open caves in the route of this creek. And if you have, how far away from the creek bed do you go to locate caves?
Can y'all see me? I'm pretty tall anyway. So that's not a part of this review from our division. That would actually be a part of the Edwards Aquifer team that would go out there and look at those features. but that's not something that's a part of the water quality standards implementation review.
Thank you. You know, it's not a feature, it's a main conduit to the aquifer.
Yes, sir, we're aware that this.
Well, then somebody needs to go ahead and take a survey and see how many open caves that this effluent can go down and pollute the aquifer.
Yes, sir, I encourage you to submit that
Will
in
you
a
look
formal
into
comment. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And my other question is, down low, under formal comments, it talks about an executive director.
Okay.
Could you identify that person by name? Who's the executive director that's gonna be fielding all these comments?
It's the program, it's the they're working for the executive director.
Who is the executive
What is her
director?
name? Man, we put you on the spot.
Well, I'm just curious, because there must be a person up there in Austin, who's obviously not here,
Yes.
who's going to be taking all this stuff down and looking at it, and then what? I don't know
The
what.
executive director.
Yes, ma'am. So the executive director right now is Miss Erin Chancellor.
Okay.
So once this goes through the process, and when it ultimately does go in front of our 3 commissioners, the executive director will make her recommendation of whether to grant this permit, to send it to a hearing, whatever that may be. And the commissioners ultimately make that decision.
Do the commissioners actually take action on the draft permit?
I mean, they decide whether or not to issue the draft permit at that time, whether to send it to a hearing, whatever that may be.
When are they going to formally consider the draft permit?
That won't be until after the response to comments, which I mentioned earlier. And then after that, there will be another document that comes out called the response to hearing request. Once that is issued, then it will be set to go in front of the commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a geologist, but I don't really understand. I do understand a little bit about the way the water does kind of percolate through the ground. What type of considerations were made in with regards to water percolating through to maybe substrates or any kind of well water quality, like aquifers or anything like that?
So the limits that are placed in the permit are protective of human health criteria and aquatic life criteria. So we assume that the water that percolates through the limestone, which is what you're referring to, is protective of water quality.
So is there like a geological report that you have or some study, or is it just like you assumed, or how do we know that it actually was, like you have they're putting their seal on it saying, hey, I'm the geologist that looked at this, and I can tell you that there's no issues there with wells or well quality?
So if you look at the permit effluent limits, this is a very, very stringent permit limit we have so far. You look at the biological oxygen demand, 5, total suspended solids, 5, ammonia, nitrogen, 2, and also has total phosphorus limit in it. So this particular permit follows the Edward Aquifers rules. We have a different chapters for especially for the Edward Aquifers rules. So those effluent limits are taken from those rules. It's not common. Commonly we place 10, 15, 3, something like that in general. But this is, you see, 5, 5, 2 limits. These are very, very, very stringent limits. And also they're using the UV system, ultralight violet system, to disinfect the effluent treated. They are not using even chlorine, so there will be no chlorine in the effluent. And also they have the dissolved oxygen level limitations. They have to maintain the minimum dissolved oxygen level 4.0 milligram per liter. They have in the interim 1 and 2 phases where the flow is little low. For interim 1 is 0.20 million gallons per day. For interim 2 is 0.40 million gallons per day. So during those phases, they need to monitor the effluent once per week, every effluent that I described before. Once they move forward with the 1 MGD, 1 million gallons per day plan, they need to monitor the effluents twice per week, 2 days per week. And they need to take composite samples means within 24 hours, they have to collect 3 samples and make them average. They are required to report us back on a monthly basis. So if we see something, it's a different program within TCEQ. If they are violating something, if we see something continuously for 3 consecutive or something times, then they will be getting under violations, enforcement actions, those kind of stuff.
Okay. As part of your process for approval or saying no or yes or no, is there any kind of a consideration to the person who's going to put this water treatment facility, any kind of looking at his or her previous, what have they done in the past, other projects, like have you been cited or violated any other states' recommendations, or is that part of your process?
Yes, it is. We run a compliance history for every permittee. If they have done anything in the past 5 years, we have that record. But since it's a new facility, for the facility itself, there is no record.
No, not the facility. I'm talking about.
Yeah, we do. There's a compliance.
No, I'm not speaking about the facility up the street here. I'm talking about the developer, the actual person's history.
Yes, we do run a compliance history by the name of the applicant who is applying for the permit. We do.
Yeah. So is it the same? Is there like any continuity? Can you just change your LLC, or how do you know whether or not you're dealing with the same type of individual, or what? What kind of? Is it just like, oh, the name's different? So okay, so it's not hard to change the name on a business. So how do you know whether or not this person is a good business person that's doing the right thing by all these people here? They're going to drink this water and be affected by it.
Okay, there's maybe a question for Bobby. Name changes or something they do.
Yeah, I mean, the applicant here is Municipal Operations LLC. We haven't gotten an application from them before. Let's say they were some bad actor.
But that's not what I asked. I asked, what about this person's question is, my question was different what you're about to say, because what I'm asking you is this the only business entity that you're looking at? It's just this one application on this one form that you looked at? Or is there other people behind the same paper that you're looking at? In other words, is this another company, and is it relevant? And was that other company cited for anything? Is that relevant?
This permit is for Municipal Operations LLC, and that's it. So no, we don't look at anything that you're talking about as far as looking into who else is behind it and whatnot. That's who the permit is issued to, and that's who's going to be responsible for maintaining and operating the plant.
So the LLC, and I'm not an attorney, I'm pretty ignorant to all that sort of stuff. So if I have an LLC and it's just me and I create an LLC, and let's say I run that LLC, fine, great. If I'm that same person with a new LLC, am I not still the same person? But is it?
Are you talking about creating multiple LLCs? I mean, we're getting into these like hypotheticals.
Well, I just want to know, has this gentleman here had any other problems in the past? As well, no, on this piece of paper it says no, because this is the only time I've ever, looked at it under this name. So I'm wondering, what's the history of this individual?
Could you submit that question in your comments, in the formal comments?
I guess I could.
And then.
Okay, all right. Well, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Or is there a commitment to do that, or is that just the concept?
There's a request with TCEQ to include this. It's a separate permitting process.
Right.
Mr. Silly can talk to that. We filed the request to do that, so they can't actually take action on it until this discharge permit's approved. You have to have a discharge permit before they give you a permit to go reclaim it. So when there's bad weather, when you can't reclaim the water, you have a place to go with it.
Understand that process, so then that gives me, I want to ask y'all a question on that same thing. If we have to have a permit, a discharge permit first, before they can do what really is the most environmentally conscious thing to do, and also the best thing for the aquifer, is there some way that we can guarantee that that's what's actually going to happen, as opposed to we get a discharge permit first and then we don't get the permit for the injection, and then all of a sudden we just dump it down the creek? Is that a possibility?
Actually, we cannot dictate the applicant the treatment process they will follow. It depends on them. We review their information, what's submitted. We cannot dictate them, hey, do OSSF, don't do the wastewater treatment plant. We don't have the authority to dictate someone.
I'm confused that the TCEQ is supposed to protect environmental quality, and we know that there's problems in this area with discharge if it's done the wrong way. Why would we not do something to stop that? You have the authority to do that.
I'll stick to my previous answers also. So we have different program also with the OSSF, with the TCEQ. We do that, and they can dispose up to 5,000 gallons per day only per OSSF. So if they go above 5,000 gallons per day, we cannot allow them to do the OSSF. So they can do multiple OSSF, or they can do a wastewater treatment systems. We don't have the authority to dictate them to adopt either of these.
I understand, but you do have the authority to say no to a sewer treatment plant and discharge.
If they don't comply with our rules, regulations, with our requirement, yes, of course, we can say no.
Okay.
But as long as they comply with rules and regulations and the authority that we are following, we cannot say no. We can ask for more information from them.
I understand. I would just ask you to consider more information. So my next question is how long have you all been operating a sewer treatment plant, or have you?
We operate 75 sewer plants across.
Use your microphone there.
Yes, sir, we operate 75 sewer plants across the state of Texas.
Okay. Are they all under the same LLC that they're checking on?
No, we have municipal operation consulting, we have a different LLC. too.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Has that LLC ever had problems with discharge or being fined or not being in compliance?
I think we have one issue in the past, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, understand. Do plants fail?
Plants have issues, but we do a good job, we do really good what we do.
Yeah, I'm not saying y'all don't do your job well. I'm just asking plants fail, right? And when they fail, what happens?
Take care of it. You fix the
No,
issue.
what happens with the discharge, with the raw sewage when a plant fails?
We'll haul it off, we'll take care of it. We won't discharge it.
Does it ever overflow the capacity of the system if it's a bad failure and discharge?
Things happen, sir.
Yeah, so that does happen, okay. So if that happens and it goes down the creek, what are we gonna do then?
Joy?
Joy.
So we
If we get lost sewage,
accidental discharge.
an unauthorized discharge, so if the permittee has an unauthorized discharge, they are required to notify us of the unauthorized discharge. They're required to send in a report within 5 days that says what occurred. Sorry, I got distracted. To tell us what occurred, how they remediated the unauthorized discharge, and how they fixed the issue so that it won't happen again. If they do not report it and we find out through a complaint or something like that, then they're in violation of the reporting requirements. If the discharge is into the creek or causes impact, such as a fish kill, that would be one of those automatic enforcements. Like I had said, it's automatic enforcement. They'll have to remediate the area and pay a penalty and fix whatever the problem was. Does that answer your question?
It does. I know you said that the treatment level, and I understand from a bacterial and a total suspended solids, VOD, et cetera, standpoint, you treat it cleaner than most water you find in a puddle or in the stream or whatever. We hear about in the news every day more and more, these forever chemicals, PFOA, all of that, in everything, every consumer device. I think we all have it in our bodies at this point, and it's not going away. Do you do any treatment for that? Does the plant treat for those? Does the plant treat for pharmaceuticals?
It's not regulated, we don't actually measure it.
Please, microphone.
It's a loaded question. It's not regulated, so we don't actually measure it. We know from experience and all the scientific data, it does, the processes we're using do actually a pretty good job of removing most of those things.
Okay. What about household chemicals?
Which ones?
Cleaning chemicals, pesticides, things that people tend to put down the drain that they shouldn't. Do we treat for those specifically?
Not specifically, no.
No. So how do you say that the water that's going into that creek is cleaner than what's in there when you know those things are in there?
One, I don't
And
know
we're-
that those things are in there.
Well, we know we're not treating for them, and we know that they're in
Are you
these
putting them down the
things.
drain?
I'm sorry?
Are you the one putting them down the drain?
You know, PFOAs are in almost everything that we buy at this point. Soaps, etc. So we know they're there. I'm simply asking the question, how can you stand there and say that the water is cleaner than the water in the creek? I understand that from a total suspended solids or a bacterial load. I get that. You guys are killing everything in it and you're running it through a system and there's very little left, and that's great. But these other residual things that are toxic, and we're over an area that recharges the aquifer almost directly, if not directly in some cases.
Josie, Michelle, can you speak to any of that?
How do we
The contaminants?
say that the water is cleaner when those things are in that water? Can anybody answer that for me? And I understand from a TCEQ standpoint that you can only check for or regulate what's regulated, but there has to be a conscience at some level where you say, you know that this is a sensitive place and a sensitive environment, and I know that it says you only have to go 2 miles or whatever downstream, but there's a lot of things downstream from here, and it does go directly into our water source. We have a wonderful water source right now in Gray Forest, and it won't be if that stuff gets in it.
That's going to be a formal session
Okay.
comment, because
All
we don't review those kind of stuff. If you put in the formal comments, those will be recorded
Okay.
and sent to the higher management for consideration in the
Okay.
future.
The lab that tests your samples for you, is it a third-party lab or your own lab?
Third-party lab.
Okay.
Accredited by the state of Texas.
Understand, thank you. Are there plans to add to this in the future, this site, to make it larger? You mentioned something about that earlier, maybe I misunderstood you.
No, the permit is for 1 million gallons, which would be as far as we understand, the entire development of that Guajolote branch.
Okay, understand, thank you. I think that's it. Thank you for your answering my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.